Hi, Hero. Welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm really excited to talk about this idea that life is 50-50. Our fairy tale life that we're all living is 50% heroes, 50% villain, 50% positive, 50% negative, 50% struggle, 50% triumph. It is 50-50. And I love this concept because it really helps us accept and allow and love and celebrate and then let go of the parts of ourselves that are negative, that are struggle, that are villains. A lot of what we do, I thought this forever. I was operating with the belief that I should be happy all of the time. And friends, heroes, that is just not possible with our human brain. We have a survival part of our brain that evolved to keep us alive when we lived in caves, when there was a real threat around every corner of a big animal or, eating the wrong thing or falling into a lake and dying. Like there was real threat around every corner when we first evolved. And that part of our brain is still there and it's still very active. But today, what else has evolved is our higher thinking part of our brain, which is the part of our brain that's the heroes, the positive, the wisdom, right? It's the part of our brain that can think long term, that can take calculated risk, that knows that that's not going to immediately kill us, right? And our mind is the battle between these two sides. That's why it's a fairy tale, half negative, half positive, half villainous, half heroes, half struggle, half triumph. And yeah, accepting that really allows you to let go of that belief that you should be happy all of the time or positive emotion all of the time. And once you let that go, you're stopping adding suffering on top of your suffering, right? Because if we're going to suffer 50% of the time, and if we're going to tell ourselves that we're not supposed to, that's adding a whole layer of suffering on top of that 50% that we already have to suffer through, right? And what happens is when you accept it and allow it, you can love it and celebrate it as your whole self, your whole fairy tale. And you can use the wand process that I talk so much about, which is what am I feeling? Allow it, name the thought. And once we're really getting curious about it, that's helping us move from that 50% negative into that 50% positive. Because the way that we move out of negative into positive, out of fear, into love, out of survival into higher thinking is with curiosity, is with play, is with take meditation, right? PQ reps, positive intelligence program. If you've probably heard me talk about that too, is that taking a step back from those thoughts and just letting and engaging that higher thinking brain to look at them. And then you've engaged it, you've made that bridge. But first, you have to allow it. First, you have to let go of that belief that you shouldn't be feeling that way. Yeah, you have to stop fighting it and start allowing it. And I wanted to talk about this week in particular because there's this trend going on social media right now when I'm recording this that is social media is fake. Here's what's real. And then people go on to talk about their struggle, right? They're 50% negative. And I wholeheartedly support this trend because we need to like normalize as a whole, as a culture, as everyone sharing our entire fairy tale struggle, right? That's why people feel so pressured. That's why there's this trend on social media, like social media is fake, here's what's real. The only reason people think it's fake and the only reason that's happening is because they're only posting their highlights and they only see people posting their highlights as opposed to their whole entire fairy tale journey. So I absolutely applaud and think we should all normalize sharing our entire struggle every day, right? Our every day, every hour is going to be filled with 50-50. It's just the way our brains work. And sharing that normalizes it and helps us let go of this belief, I don't know where it came from. I mean, I grew up with it. I don't know where it came from. I don't think my parents ever told me you should be happy all the time, right? I know some parents do. I know some people were told that, right? Like, quit complaining. There's nothing to, right? Like you should just be happy. Um, that's not what my parents said, but I still grew up thinking like, oh, I need to be happy half the time. And I can tell you that my struggles with anxiety were so hard because of that belief, right? But in part because of that belief. Like I remember talking to a therapist and them first telling me like, we think you would benefit from meds from anxiety. You really have anxiety, and just like bawling because it meant that I made it mean that I wasn't a happy person and that I couldn't be happy all the time. And I was telling myself so forcibly and intently that I needed to be happy all the time, right? So, so with life coaching, I've let that go and recognized like, this is my anxiety is part of my 50-50. It's okay. It's just what my brain does. It's part of me, more than okay. Like I can love it. I can celebrate it. Like that is part of me. Like I am like, PQ rep, it's like I am hyper vigilant, right? Like in the positive intelligence program, you can take a saboteur quiz. I'd love to give it to you if you ever are interested, email me. And it will give you your top 3 saboteurs. Saboteurs are the fear side of your brain, the survival part of your brain. And in the positive intelligence program, Shirzad Shamin has looked at all this research in performance science and cognitive behavioral therapy and a few other areas and done factor analysis. So brought it all together into this big operating system, big, beautiful operating system. And the way he talks about survival brain and fear-based brain is saboteurs. And he's like categorized 10 different like patterns that those saboteurs fall in. And you can take the quiz. My top one is hypervigilant, right? So, and when I took it, I was like, isn't every new mom hypervigilant? But like not to the extreme that my brain doesn't, which is like every moment worrying about what will go wrong, right? And half the time, more than half the time, those things don't go wrong, right? But that's part of my brain, and that's okay. Like the more that I accept it and get curious about it, like, interesting, like, why is that part of my brain? Do I really want it to be part of my brain? And then that last part of the ones process, which is like decide what thought is driving. So when I notice my hypervigilance, like doing PQ reps, allowing it, getting curious, helping my brain move into the sage part of the brain, that's another positive intelligence term, but into that higher thinking part of the brain, where I can then decide, like, okay, you can be like hypervigilance is going to be with me until it's not, right? Like, sort of that part of my survival brain, that anxiety is going to be with me until it's not. That's okay. It's part of me. I love it, right? Like, thanks for trying to keep me safe. Um, I can find that I can find a lot of love for it when I think of it as so I have a rescue dog and he is very like something happened to him, right? Like he's afraid of so many things and he gets like very activated about like noises and hats and flashlights and everything. Um, and I just kind of think of that part of my brain, that anxiety, that hypervigilant part of my brain, like him, like he's afraid of and so much happening. He's afraid of so much, and when he's barking, he's just trying to like alert us and that's his way of alerting, releasing that energy. And like I think of that part of my brain sometimes like that, like, oh, it's just this lovable little dog who is just overactivated, right? Like it's okay, it's part of me, like it's cute, like thank you for trying to keep me safe, right? It's just how my brain is doing that. And with that love, with that acceptance of the 50% of our life, of the real part of our life, then I can decide, okay, but I don't want my hypervigilant to drive my everyday experience, right? Like then I'm just anxious and worried all the time. But what I can do now that I'm in the higher thinking part of my brain is I can think like, okay, maybe I want, I talk about this a lot, like the mermaid who's driving the horse-drawn carriage for the first time to drive this experience of doing something new, right? She's so excited. She's so ready. She's just in it, like experiencing it present, right? Like, yes, that's how I want my experience to be more like, right? Or to my magic, like my magic comes from helping people, from pushing possibilities, from, like trying to come up with new ideas and figure things out, right? And mystery and excitement in that way. And so refocusing my brain on that and letting my sage power, that higher thinking part of my brain come in. Um, so yeah, so I just really wanted to talk about that trend and really encourage that we all normalize that life is 50-50, 50% villains, 50% heroes. That's a full fairy tale, right? You wouldn't like a fairy tale. We identify with fairy tales because we identify with the heroes and villains, right? Like that is our life. It's struggle and triumph. It's not just triumph all the time. It's not just happiness all the time. And when we let go of that belief that it should be, then we can really allow and accept ourselves and love ourselves and work through to the higher thinking part of our brain instead of just fighting what exists because we're human, right? So join me in this movement to normalize that we are 50-50, life is 50-50, and yeah, that social media doesn't have to be fake if we all share our whole struggles, right? Okay, thank you so much. Bye.